Hi everyone, my name is Rene Garcia and I'm a divorce and recovery coach for men. Divorce is the third biggest stressor an adult male will undergo, and often when we go through it, we're alone and we cut ourselves off. We don't have a good support system. I became a recovery coach for a litany of reasons, because there's very little out there for men to deal with when it comes to the pain of divorce. Because culture dictates to men that we should just suck it up, and any expression of grief is weakness. Because there's a lot of misconceptions and prejudgment about divorcing men. Because despite gender roles changing and being redefined, we as men, we're failing one another. We're failing to evolve and to develop as we just stonewall and do nothing. Because it's our responsibility to take care of ourselves and become a better version of our past. Because according to the CDC's National Violent Deaths and Reporting System, divorced men, we're 2.5 times more likely to kill ourselves than married men. And this is often our silent epidemic. In this video, I sit down with my guest and client, Bryan Abasolo. We're going to delve into his experiences and discuss some common challenges encountered during the decision-making process. Many of you might recognize Bryan from season 13 of the hit TV show, The Bachelorette. He's also the owner of the Beverly Hills Disc and Laser Therapy Center. Check out his practice. He's located in the corner of San Vicente and Wilshire, here in Los Angeles. When Bryan reached out, it was a delicate situation as he was the one contemplating the divorce. He sought an unbiased perspective from someone that specializes in working with divorcing men. While I don't offer marriage advice, nor do I get involved in family matters, I approached our consultation with kid gloves, with utmost care and sensitivity. My goal, it was not to sway this agonizing decision in either direction. I kept the conversation informative and neutral. My strategy, it was to educate and inform him, thereby laying down a roadmap for what he could and should expect throughout this process. He needed to be prepared both logistically and emotionally. This will be one of 3 series in discussing the process, the pre, during, and post-divorce. This one in particular was recorded back in February, 1 month after his filing. So if you're interested in a free consultation, just click on my link in the comment section underneath or here in the video and make an appointment. Of course, subscribe to my channel and follow along as we explore Bryan's journey and help give clarity to the emotional and confusing process called divorce. Now, let's start revving that engine. You and I first spoke back in September 2023.
Yeah.
You were under an alias. Do you remember the alias?
I do. Rob A.
You were clearly concerned about your privacy, and it's normal. A lot of guys during this time, we get paranoid. How'd you find me?
To be honest, I was looking for videos on marriage and how separation works on YouTube. And I would say after seeing so many videos on women saying how online content was helping them with this exact situation, I just decided to reach out, and I came across one of your videos. I don't know, man, I connected with you. I really wasn't looking for legal advice, right? I was looking for exactly what you offered. Someone that would listen, open communication, and just somebody with an understanding of this tough road, this tough path through divorce. I honestly wanted to be honest with myself and for the sake of our relationship.
The foresight and emotional intelligence that Bryan displayed by just reaching out, it's unique to me because guys, typically we tend to want to solve our own problems. So we keep things inside of ourselves, bottled up until shit gets worse. You, for instance, you might be relying in just one or a handful of people. She's building a formidable support team, her empire. So Bryan's spot on here. Moreover, Bryan's reluctance to involve his loved ones, it shows the maturity he has because he doesn't want to build any walls between him and his wife should the relationship stand. If you're going to talk to someone, make sure that they're both objective and knowledgeable. Avoid those who will just fuel your anger or resentment. From the minute that one of your confidants begins to show resentment against your spouse, you've just burned a bridge. You need to be strategic and intentional about those that you confide in. And that's what Bryan did. He was reaching out to me because I haven't been through just 2 divorces. I've been through hundreds of them. Get ahead of the problem. Surround yourself with the right, knowledgeable people. So I asked him, when did he know that he was going to file? Did you know that you were going to file?
I was thinking about divorce because I had already asked for a separation a few months back. I was sleeping in a different bedroom. we were already going to marriage counseling. Listen, the therapist was absolutely phenomenal. I love him. Like, I think he's a great guy and he gives great advice. And for a while it seemed to be working, and I actually set aside my divorce thoughts to give the relationship one last major push. But, you know, as time went on, things just went right back to the way they were before. I needed someone who had absolutely no loyalties to either of us or any type of incentive in the outcome. I needed someone to help me process my feelings, and I needed someone to honestly give me kind of like a reality check on what was to come if I decided to move forward in this.
Bryan's search for clarity and authenticity is completely remarkable. What he's experiencing is just textbook. In the dissolution, one's mind, it needs to be made up not just once, but twice. First, the decision to divorce is made subconsciously. You know it, but you don't know you know it. Something's just not right. So there's this dissonance there. I suspect that that's where Bryan was at when we first spoke. Never told him. It wouldn't be fair. He had to conclude that on his own. Second is recognizing and validating those feelings. And that's when it's too late, because that's when you made up your mind. And Bryan was not there when we spoke. We seek marriage counselors, but our 45-minute weekly sessions, they become bitch sessions, mistaking counselors for referees rather than the therapists that they are. I hear it all the time. The marriage counselor took my side, Rene. But that's a hollow victory. Bryan, he did the correct thing. He kept those emotions separate. He needed this private time to reflect on his own. No expectations from his loved ones. He needed this on his own. So I asked him, what did make you take that leap of faith?
I didn't want to alarm my friends or my family by telling them what I was thinking. I also didn't want people that I knew to just tell me what I wanted to hear, because if I was making a mistake, if I was being an idiot, I wanted to hear it. It's not like I've been divorced before, so I had no idea what to do. And I just knew that nothing was working, and I felt I was just existing. And I hadn't felt right in a while. Reaching out to you was tricky because I didn't want this to leak to the press. Like, you know how paranoid I was about that. You know, your respect of my confidentiality was at first doubtful, but I'm glad you have the ethics that you do, you know, because here in LA, it's hard to trust anyone, as you must know. And it was also great that you had personal experience because you also went through a divorce.
Now, a common misconception about divorce is that it's typically the guy that wants to file, but this is complete nonsense. Studies show that 69 to 90% of the time, it's the women that want the divorce. Social psychologists, they'll say that men don't recover from divorce as well as women do. The rate of suicide amongst divorced men is 2.5 times higher than that of married men. Let this sink in. You're a risk factor for suicide and you don't even have a support system. This is the shit that no one wants to talk about. Now, according to Support and Solutions for Thriving Beyond Divorce, 70 to 80% of clients seeking divorce coaching services are women, not men. Bryan, what he did, he's bringing up awareness to others. And it's unusual that a man will speak up on the matter because, well, typically we get shamed. As you probably noticed, Bryan, he was very careful as to who he reached out to. And there's a reason for that. What Bryan's going through is what in military terms is called a fog of war, and paranoia. It kicks in because you have absolutely no situational awareness. Metaphorically speaking, you don't know the terrain, if an attack is coming, when an attack is coming. And right now, he doesn't know his rights nor his obligation. And that's why it was crucial for him to be prepared. And once Bryan made up his mind, he was abso-freaking-lutely prepared. So I asked him, what was the tipping point?
I'll start by paying you a compliment. You didn't try to influence my decision. You respected my family and my vows. You gave me ways to essentially calm the noise and just process my thoughts in a reasonable manner. You also gave me ways to continue fighting for the bond and give me more of an objective view of the situation. And you didn't make me feel like I was a failure. You didn't make me feel like I was weak or being judged. And honestly, I really appreciated that, right? But with that being said, now on the other end, there does come a moment when things like this may happen in your life, when you just know in your heart of hearts that you have to make a tough decision. And if I'm honest with myself, I was stonewalling because there were some great moments. Like, I'm never going to deny that fact. And there was genuine, real love there.
Research indicates that men stonewall much more than women do. That somehow the problem is just going to magically disappear. I get at least one stonewaller a week, and they wait and wait. And then 3 months later, I inevitably receive a message saying that they should have gone with me, but now they're in deep shit. Stonewalling involves withdrawing and not facing the problem. And often guys will say something like, "Fuck, man, I don't have time for this shit." Fortunately, Bryan, he was self-aware enough not to be wasting anyone's time, and he got on top of the problem. When December 31st happened, I believe it was under those conditions. So you said it. How'd that feel?
That was one of the toughest things I ever had to do in my life. How I felt when I did it, I felt like I was being blindfolded, and then suddenly I was able to see sunlight. It was uncomfortable. And then there was the other end of the spectrum. There was all this fear that entered my body. It was just a huge mix of emotions. So on one end, I was in a weird friend zone situation for a while, and we started to live different lives, and our interests and our priorities, they just weren't no longer aligned. And if I look at the other aspect of it, there was this huge admiration for her and all these amazing times and amazing feelings at us both starting with very little and being part of a true team that cared about each other. And I felt that I was doing my part as a husband, and that felt great. There came a time where I needed to stop letting circumstances and my fear delay what was inevitably going to happen.
So at this point, Bryan, just like any other person that's leaving a marriage, he's been plagued by this horrible decision for some time now. So when Bryan knew, he was certain. He was not out there to hurt her, and he was certainly not there to waste any kind of her time either. But she was going to be hurt. A lot of people talk about the 5 stages of grief, but that's really after a book called Death and Dying by Kubler-Ross. It's written for the terminally ill. Now, when someone grieves from divorce, it's more like love, anger, regret, anger, hate, love, hate, pity, disgust, all of the above, all in a matter of a second. Now, a lot of couples, when they need fulfillment, they turn to trying to have children, and it only adds stress to the problem. It's just an exercise in fertility, and I addressed this often with Bryan, and I asked him about this, trying to have children, and along with options for the relationship. And here's what he said.
I wanted kids like anybody else, but other things were made a priority, which put a lot of pressure on the both of us. Women have a different biological clock than us. It was going to be me going along with a plan, but I was under a hell of a lot of stress. And then that was tough. That was so hard. It felt terrible. Just watching her sadness, it broke my heart. It was like I was failing expectations on all fronts. I just had to go deeper into work to cope with that pressure, and that was creating a unhealthy communication pattern between us. I mean, we didn't spend enough time with each other. I mean, in my estimation, we saw what the other person was doing in the relationship mainly on Instagram, although we lived in the same house.
You gave it your all. You gave it what you could. You took the route that most men don't take. Bottom line. And sadly, you put things in motion.
Yeah, I put things in motion. The lawyer that I had on hold made his recommendations, and I trusted his choices, and I just went with it. my priority in that moment was to protect my mental health and just relieve the pressure. Unlike you, someone working at the court doesn't care about privacy, and they leaked it. And to be honest, I wasn't thinking. I wasn't prepared for the added public pressure. But at the end of the day, that's LA for you, right? It's all public figure gossip is. It's a juicy headline. That's what it is. And I moved to LA with the plan to essentially not get in the way and to start another practice after we had already moved twice before. In actuality, we almost moved to New York last year. I mean, I hate to say it, I'm actually glad that TV opportunity decided to move in another direction, because I would have had to have basically made a decision to shut down, park my practice once again, and now this would be to city number 4. You don't want to limit the person that you have vows with. Like, you want to see them grow as much as possible. But to answer your question, I'm just remaining calm as much as possible and just preparing for what happens next, and just taking things day to day. That's all you can do.
Thanks for coming, Bryan, being there and everything. And next part of the series is going to be what happens when you're divorced. It's going to be virtual, probably.
Thank you, man, for everything. I mean, muchas gracias.
De nada. I hear that a lot. Believe it or not. So
yeah, man, you were definitely needed for sure.